my name's Owen. I'm one of the worker owners here at Urban Cyclist. Welcome to Bike Shop Basics. Bike Shop Basics is a video series aiming at demystifying and educating folks about bike terminology. Our goal is to help you feel more confident when stepping into your local bike shop. Today's topic is handlebars. This comes up both while shopping for a new bike, whether you're trying to customize your current ride, or if you're just trying to find out what accessories are compatible with your bike. Our broad terms and breakdown is going to be flat bars versus drop bars. So to start, we're going to look at flat handlebars. Flat handlebars is a broad term. This is going to be what you're going to see on typical hybrids, city bikes, mountain bikes, but just because it's called a flat bar doesn't mean it's inherently flat. When we use the term flat bar, we include kind of a whole blanket of handlebars under this. And these handlebars do include riser bars. They include kind of swoopy or curved bars that are more found on kind of cruiser style bikes. And they also include the umbrella category of alt bar or alternative bar, which may have more than one hand position or kind of a non-conventional single tube approach to the shape. So the grip area on a flat bar is traditionally 22.2 millimeters. The clamp area for the stem on modern bikes is typically 31.8, but can also be 25.4. There are some exceptions, such as vintage mountain bikes or BMX, that will also maintain the 22.2 clamp area across the whole bar, and this also has some specialty use cases as well, such as custom titanium handlebars. Drop bars, on the other hand, are traditionally found on road bikes. They're distinct as they roll down below the clamp area. Drop bars are often found also on gravel bikes. The major distinction when we're talking about drop bars is the clamp or the grip area on a drop bar is referred to as either 23.8 or 24 millimeters. When we're talking about the stem clamp area on a drop bar, modern bikes are going to have 31.8 millimeter, where vintage bikes may have 25.4 millimeter or 26 millimeter, and there are even some exceptions beyond those kind of standards. Between the 25.4 and 26, it's very hard to determine by the naked eye, so it's best to use a caliper to measure precisely. The distinction of the clamp sizes between the drop bar and flat bar comes up a lot when people want to either convert flat bars to drop bars or drop bars to flat bars. The compatibility between shifter and brake lever and all the mounting area is what really gets us into some kind of domino effects when we're fixing up or altering a bike. So although we've gone over a lot of numbers so far, it might seem really complicated, but it's not too hard. But there's a couple of distinctions to make, because when we're talking accessories, they're only going to work if you choose the right size. So a good example would be bells. Certain bells, like here, this is the Nog Oi, and this is the smaller variant. The smaller variant is only designed to actually fit on a flat handlebar. So if I have the flat handlebar, it's going to fit anywhere on this grip area, but it's not going to fit in the middle anywhere because that flares out to a larger clamp size. Here's an Oi Deluxe, which is a much larger diameter. This is 31.8, which means it's going to fit in the middle of a modern road drop bar. It could also fit in the middle of maybe a flat or a riser bar if it's oversized. But then there's going to be a shim to fit anywhere else if you want on a road bike drop bar. There's some very simple options as well. Something like this from Cat-Eye. It's kind of like a zip tie where you just kind of choose how big you want and you can dial this in and trim the tail as needed. So this fits just about anything. So one of our best sellers here is the Crane Ine, which is a great bell. It's all metal, made in Japan, and one of the reasons I love it is it fits anywhere from 22 millimeters up to 31.8, meaning just about any bar that we're going to have in stock, this will fit. So another distinction to make between flat bars and drop bars is the conventions of how we cover them. So we have some bar tape here, which is traditionally just used on drop bars, and we have a grip here that is traditionally just used on flat bars. Now this is a non-locking grip, so it's just a rubbery tube effectively. It is sized specifically for a flat bar, but some people will occasionally jam them over top of the bottom of a drop bar, for example, which is possible, it's just hard to do. And you'll see sometimes people repurposing bar tape to wrap like alternative bars if they don't have enough padding for their comfort. So that's another obvious distinction to make for the kind of general broad terms of flat versus drop bars. So another thing to think about is between flat bars and drop bars, a huge benefit of a drop bar is typically the fact that there's multiple hand positions. So traditionally, when we're talking about touring and more distance-based cycling, we often will see people using drop bars. So a way to make a flat handlebar with a single position more comfortable is using something like an ergonomic grip. So these grips from Ergon are probably one of our top upgrades for a flat handlebar. If you're experiencing any hand numbness, it's a great way to increase the comfort of your bike. Another distinction to be made about a lot of these grips is this is a lock-on grip. It has this collar that actually holds it in place. So where this wing supports your hand, when you put pressure on it, it's not going to be slipping under load. That also means it's a solid plastic interior which will not fit on a larger diameter bar, like a drop bar. So this is where it gets complicated, is when we start to talk about shifting. We're in the same limitations of clamp sizes, but a lot of folks often say, hey, I have a flat bar hybrid, I want to put drop bars on it. So before you even start talking about the actual handlebars, there's a huge range of compatibility issues. The compatibility can range from the physical shifter fitting onto the handlebar, but it can go even further to the shifter that you would need then not working with the derailleurs on the bike. So we often experience a pretty common domino effect where changing one component, such as the handlebar, then leads to potentially hundreds of dollars down the line of modifications and adjustments that need to be made to make the bike fully functional. So this would be a road style. We call this one a brifter or an STI shifter. And this again is that 23.8 or 24 millimeters that fit onto the drop bar here. So this primary position, it's going to fit kind of right in the crook of the curve here, and that hood position is the primary position on the bike. So a thing to think about if you were hoping to convert your bike perhaps to drop bar from flat bar would be the fact that there is a reach added onto the actual bar itself, and there's even additional reach onto the lever itself. So typically you're at very least going to need to factor that in for choosing your stem length, but it also can be a determining factor whether a frame is even going to fit well as a drop bar. Drop bar frames are typically designed with that in mind in the production process. So if we take this for example, this is a grip shift, nice and simple, very commonly found on lots of hybrids for many years. This is that same distinction. It physically cannot fit. Where things get a little different as well, we have things like bar end shifters, and the same kind of applies in reverse, where this is designed to fit into the inside of a dropped handlebar, but because a flat bar typically is smaller, that inner diameter is not big enough to receive a bar end shifter or perhaps a bar end brake lever. Again, exceptions do exist. Velo Orange, for example, does make some bars in a 23.8 variant, meaning you can't fit traditional lock-on grips, and you are going to be using maybe a bar end shifter or alternate brake levers even to make that work. So it gets really complicated fast because that same domino effect we're talking about goes down the line. If you choose those bars that are a less common clamp size, you then need to choose less common components to fit with it. So when I consider flat handlebars, I think about something kind of like this simple little riser as kind of a baseline to compare against. So this is kind of something you've seen for many years, decades even, that's going to come stock on a hybrid bike. So when I try to think about this, I often look at it from the top as if I'm looking down at the bar, and I think about where my grip area is in relation to the clamp. And that's going to affect your overall positioning on the bike. So for example, if you're converting an old mountain bike that maybe feels really long and stretched out, you may want to consider choosing something with a little more back sweep or perhaps a little more height. So here, this is the Klunker bar from Velo Orange, which you can see is a pretty dramatic back sweep, so quite a lot of distance coming back, and also quite a lot of height. It's a steel handlebar, so it's pretty tough. So if you wanted to maybe make something that's kind of more rugged, kind of cruiser style, this would be a great choice for you. It also fits quite upright with a nice heavy back sweep, which is a really comfortable, ergonomic, nicely aligned position for your wrist. Here's another option from Velo Orange, even a more severe back sweep. So extreme, not a lot of rise, not a lot of upsweep, relatively flat. But again, this is going to change your overall riding position quite dramatically over a flat bar to then shorten, changing your wrist position, changing your elbow position. So one point to think about is if you have something like this, a more traditional little flat bar or a small rise, and you want to convert to something bigger with more back sweep, there's a very good chance you're going to need to increase the length of your cables. You sometimes hear these called trekking bars. Sometimes you hear them called butterfly handlebars. They're a little puzzling because it's a little unsure of how they go, but that's kind of why they're fun. You can go any which way you like. Something that's distinctive about these is clamp position is the same as any mountain bike flat bar, riser bar, swoopy bar, but you get the benefit of mixed positions just like you would see on a road bike. So again, think about where this clamp position is and where your hands can be in relation to it. So you can have your primary position with your controls here, shorter than traditionally the bike may have come with, and then you can have a kind of more upright reached position to be a little more kind of aerodynamic. There's not one way to run these bars. They're actually a very fun and kind of creative way to set up a bike. They were very popular in Europe to convert old mountain bikes to become touring bikes in a very economical way. And we can't be talking about alt bars without mentioning the Jones H bar. So the Jones H bar is kind of a fun one. It's got this nice loop, and probably the most distinctive aspect of it is, first of all, it's huge, but it's got a really severe amount of back sweep in relation to this central area. So if you think of the stem reaching out, the bar almost completely cancels the amount of reach for that. So it's ideal to make a long bike more upright or for adapting a mountain bike for touring, but it's also off-road rated, so it's extremely tough and great for long distance travel. So here's another popular one from Velo Orange. This is an updated version of what they call the Crazy Bar. And the Crazy Bar is actually getting into the kind of strange world of alt bars where we start to see different tubing sizes. So you have this kind of back swept rise bar that's quite wide. And then the funny thing is you have the traditional flat bar standard of 22.2, but then they also include a 23.8 or a 24 millimeter extension here. So it kind of feels like a hood position on a road bike, but the funny thing is the distinction of something like a bar and shifter you could actually have in here. So you could have bar and shifters and standard mountain bike brakes. So when talking about drop bars, we mentioned we have the reach and we also have the drop. This here is also a flared, more traditional shaped bar from Grand Cru or Velo Orange. So when choosing drop bars, you do need to take note of where they're measured from. Traditionally, most bars are measured from the center to center at the hood, so the center of the tube over to here. And another distinction to make is bars come in different sizes. With a flat, riser, or alternative style handlebar, you're gonna have one size almost exclusively, and you just put it on the bike. Traditionally, drop bars are sized to your shoulders, but now we start to see deviations from that. When the gravel categories, people often like wider for comfort, and sometimes in road and track, people choose smaller than they typically should be riding for aerodynamic advantage. This is a great option as a baseline, which is the Salsa Cowbell. It comes in kind of your normal standard sizes. It's measured at the hoods. If you look closely, you'll see there actually is markings to help with even hood placement while setting up the bike. This would be considered a fairly compact bar, so you'll notice quite a short reach and a fairly shallow drop. It does have a gentle flare, so they categorize this as a gravel race bar, but it's also very much at home on a road bike. And just for comparison, we can see a more traditional shape of drop versus a compact style drop. So as we look at more touring oriented drop bars, you're going to see some distinctions, often coming in wider sizes and more dramatic flare. So the dramatic flare of the Cowchipper is a little funny because the hood position is still the main measurement, but because they are flared in a more dramatic way, the overall width actually ends up being wider for equivalent sizes. So if you compare a Cowbell to a Cowchipper, the actual overall bottom length is going to be wider on a Cowchipper over a Cowbell. So a less common but still pretty prevalent style of drop, this is called an Ergo drop, which is designed to contour the bottom of with your hand. So what's distinctive about this is the Ritchey Venturemax. This is actually an extremely shallow drop. So much more compressed and not quite as long as you'll typically see on other shallow drops. One thing I love about Ritchey is they're very upfront and good about providing the reach and drop information. They're actually printed right on the clamp area of the handlebar and very clearly displayed on the packaging. So needless to say, when dealing with drop bars, there's a lot of different numbers, a lot of different shapes, and a lot of angles to consider. So if you're looking for different resources, I would highly encourage to check out the website What Bars. They don't have all widths available, but it can be a really good way to compare overall shapes and also relative flare between different handlebars and shapes. So something that's even more unique about some new modern takes on drop bars is you're going to see stuff like the Surly truck stop. The truck stop is what I often would refer to as a riser drop. It's a little unique in the sense that it adds height to your primary position, which is up at the tops, the hoods, as well as the drops. Everything's proportionally raised. So this can be a problem-solving handlebar if you find the front end of your bike too low, or maybe the steer tube's been cut too short, or maybe it's a used bike you're trying to adapt to make fit best for you. So these again have a gentle flare, I would say probably not unlike the Cowbell, but can be a great problem solver, or also if you're just experiencing potentially some tension in your lower back and aren't enjoying your road bike like you used to. Customizing your handlebars is one of the most fun ways to personalize your bicycle. Changing your bars to a different style can make a huge difference in the quality of your ride. We hope you learned something today, and if you have any other questions, please shoot them down in the comments. We'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.